It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of November 14th, 1997. We've got 6 movies to look at overall. Technically 5, because one of them is a re-release, and we're going to shake things up a little bit here because there's going to be a purpose for me for doing this. But before we eventually get to that film that I'm talking about, let's talk about some of the newer releases that came out this weekend. And we're going to start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Richard Gere, Bruce Willis, and Sidney Poitier in The Jackal.
Can you kill this person?
Yes.
How much?
70 million.
They call him the Jackal. He operates in secret.
No KGB member has ever seen him.
And his target
This guy's going for the gold.
has only one chance.
What will it take for you to help us?
Remember, public and brutal.
Bruce Willis, Richard Gere, Sidney Poitier. The Jackal.
So as I kind of said before, this is the second time that we're looking at a movie in 1997 that was basically a retread of The Jackal, with the first one being The Assignment, which came out a few weeks prior to this. But this is the more notable one because, one, it was a bigger hit than The Assignment, but more importantly, it's notable because it did not get the best reviews and is largely seen as a film that most people generally forget about because the film itself was not that great. And for a straight-up reimagining of a loose take on The Day of the Jackal, the original 1973 film, to do this in a modern day, is obviously you're going to have people that are going to be very optimistic about this. I mean, the director, the producer of the original film, Fred Zinnemann and John Wolfe, opposed the production and eventually filed an injunction from Universal Pictures to prevent them from using the name of the original novel or film on there. And it would have had to been marketed as an inspired by film rather than directly based off the novel by Frederick Forsyth. And even Edward Fox, who was in the original Day of the Jackal, refused to make a cameo in the movie because of that. And so, yeah, needless to say, if you're gonna that should give you an early warning sign about this movie. And yeah, this movie is not that great, despite the talent that they have on here. I mean, Richard Gere, Bruce Willis, Sidney Poitier, all amazing actors in other movies, but in here, they're dealing with a film that's so watered down, so uninspired, and so let's play it safe. It's an uncomfortable experience to watch. Like, there's no real fun factor in this movie. There's nothing intriguing going on in this movie. Everybody here is kind of a dumbass too. I mean, there's nobody in this movie that you can really get behind because everybody in this movie is really, really stupid. Like, what's the biggest takeaway from this movie? Oh, you get to see Jack Black get killed by Bruce Willis in one scene. An early Jack Black, I should say, but is that really all you want to take away from this movie, or do you want to actually have a movie that actually asks you to think about something, actually wants you to get invested in the story that's going on? That's what happens in the original Day of the Jackal, and that's why that movie is so special to people. This is just straight up garbage. I mean, this movie has way too many good people involved in this, and you expect a lot more considering the talent on board here, especially the director that they have, Michael Caton Jones, who also did Doc Hollywood. He did Rob Roy, Memphis Belle, Scandal, movies we've talked about on this show on a number of occasions. But this in particular was the start of his inevitable downfall as a filmmaker, because he never really made a great film after that, and most of the movies he's made were either not just disappointments or notoriously bad movies, stuff like Basic Instinct 2 and City by the Sea, and this clearly was not up to par with. This is clearly the beginning of the downfall for Michael Caton Jones as a director, and it just didn't work as a whole. It's a real letdown of a movie on so many levels. Too many good, talented people on board. Should have been a whole lot better than what it was. So yeah, like I said, we could move on to the next movie, but I'm going to save that one for a little bit later on. But let's go ahead and move on to the movie that came after that, and that is Bill Murray in The Man Who Knew Too Little.
There's a new name for action, for irresistible, for the deadly.
Whoa, that was loud.
What are you, CIA, Mafia?
Both.
Wallace Ritchie is about to be mistaken
Yo, matey, you just stabbed me with your pen.
for a real secret agent.
Daddy, may I please borrow the keys to the station wagon?
He thinks it's all just a game. But they're dead serious.
I've never seen a dead body before.
Well, you gotta check and see just how dead they are. You don't have to be able to catch this.
You are so twisted.
He's got the courage of a lion,
Please don't kill me, man. I'll give you anything. I give you all the money I got.
the strength of a bull. Fabulous. You said nothing about American Superman. You're a sweet little pocket rocket. What fun. And the reflexes of a cat. Voice lock. Okay. Are those real cops?
Can I see your driving license?
No, you may
Not.
this fall. That is so refreshing.
The intelligence community gets a little less intelligent.
Do I get a last request?
Like a cigarette or something?
I had something more substantial in mind.
Cigar?
Man, he's a god.
I'm sorry, I was a little insensitive. But I'm a hitman.
Bill Murray is
Oh, time out, I got some in my eye.
the man who knew too little.
Because if Larger Than Life wasn't enough to show how little Bill Murray gave a crap in the late 90s, here's The Man Who Knew Too Little, where he basically plays an American who gets a ticket for this game show in London, England, and then he gets involved in a case of mistaken identity, and as this international plot unravels around him, he thinks it's all part of the act. And this is a parody of the Alfred Hitchcock 1934 movie, The Man Who Knew Too Much, as well as his remake to that 22 years after in 1956. And I've never seen a trailer make this movie more unfunny or more unentertaining than what I just saw there. I mean, this is Bill Murray at his absolute worst. I know the Garfield movies are bad. I know Larger Than Life was not a great movie, but this is the worst of the worst. This is the worst movie he's ever been involved in that I can think of. I mean, a movie that is just not funny by any means necessary. There's no good jokes in the movie. The chemistry between him and Joanna Wally is not great whatsoever. You have too many good people involved. There's Peter Gallagher, Alfred Molina, Richard Wilson, Geraldine James, Dexter Fletcher, Eddie Marsan. Just too many good people involved in this movie. And Bill Murray should know better than this. Bill Murray can be very, very funny. He could take any bad script and usually make something good out of it. But at the same time, this is one of those examples of him just not being able to do that. It's a film that's just so lifeless. The jokes aren't funny. The jokes aren't clever. The humor isn't clever. The chemistry between the two leads isn't interesting whatsoever. The story isn't intriguing. It's just a mess of a movie. And this is directed by John Emile, who's done not the best amount of works, but at least some films that are actually tolerable, like stuff like Summersby, Copycat. I mean, this is just one of those movies that's just like, what were you thinking, dude? It's just like, everybody in this movie, you got to be asking yourself, what the hell were you guys thinking when you decided to make this movie? I mean, if you know what it reminded me of, honestly, the more I think about it? That Tom Hanks movie, The Man with One Red Shoe. I mean, it's pretty much kind of the same plot. It has kind of a lot of the same elements to it, but that movie's at least more clever and at least has more funnier moments in there than this. Like, that one was actually trying. This one was not. This is a film that's just really... It's depressing to watch, especially with somebody as talented as Bill Murray. Like, this is a guy that deserves a whole lot better than this, and I guess I could say that luckily he'd go on to make some better things after this. I mean, he did make better movies after this one. This wasn't a movie that completely killed his career, but it was a movie that kind of slowed him down big time for a little bit, but... So yeah, that's The Man Who Knew Too Little. So let's go ahead and move on to yet another underwhelming film that came out this weekend. Mike Figgis' follow-up to Leaving Las Vegas, and that is One Night Stand.
I'm a commercial director.
I have 2 children and a very beautiful wife. I'm in New York for business just overnight. Are you all right?
Just so you know.
I have something to tell you. I'm worried about you. An entire life can change in just one night. One night stand. Rated R.
Would you expect anything less from Joe Esterhaus, who wrote this movie? Well, technically, he wrote the first draft of it, and then he had his name removed from the project once Mike Figgis came along and rewrote it. And just think about this for a second. If you it's like the fact that Joe Esterhaus's final script was not used for this. Maybe they were. Then again, come to think of it, the more I think about it, maybe they should have just used that script, because what we would have gotten there certainly would have been a whole lot better than what this movie is. I mean, this movie, it's a standard premise. You have this guy played by Wesley Snipes, who's a television commercial director. He's happily married to this girl played by Ming-Na, of course Mulan, who has 2 children. And when he goes to New York, he meets this woman named Karen, played by Anastasia, and they end up essentially having an affair. And then he returns home, and Max clearly has no idea how to feel about himself. So, and a year passes by, and both of them both Max and his wife fly out to New York to meet his friend Charlie, played by Robert Downey Jr., who's near death from AIDS. And he meets Charlie's brother, played by Kyle MacLachlan, and is introduced to his new wife, Karen, Anastasia Kinski. And facing Karen sends Max into an emotional tailspin. He realizes that he must tell Mimi the truth about his indiscretion. You see what's going to happen at this point. I don't really think I need to explain what happens after this point. At the same time, though, you kind of expect a little bit more from this movie, considering the talent on board here. This is Mike Figgis' follow-up to Leaving Las Vegas. In fact, he was shocked Leaving Las Vegas ended up being successful. He said that he thought that would bomb horribly and this would be a huge commercial hit. And he basically said he's glad Leaving Las Vegas did well and still doesn't know what happened with One Night Stand. I think, honestly, what happened was the biggest problem with it is that a couple of things came into play here. One, you're doing a movie about infidelity, and this is a tough thing to make a movie out of. It's hard to make a movie like this work, and also trying to add in these elements in here, like the subplot about Robert Downey Jr.'s character dying of AIDS, and the fact that at the time Robert Downey Jr. was having drug addiction problems, and he was this was kind of the start of Downey Jr.'s brief downfall at this point before he eventually come back in the later half of the next decade. But you have so many things going on in this movie, and you don't have any likable characters to really get behind. I mean, right from the beginning, Wesley Snipes in this movie should be really good. He's given it his all in here, but his character is just so... He's just so full of himself. Like, every character in this movie seems to be full of themselves. And it's just like, you can't really get behind anybody, because we all know how this is going to end. We know what the downfall is going to be. We know exactly how this is going to transpire when it's all said and done. And it just didn't come together, I think, as well as I think they wanted it to. The acting overall isn't terrible. Everybody's given their all to these performances in here. Like, Wesley Snipes is very good. Anastasia Kinski, Kyle MacLachlan, Ming-Na, Robert Downey Jr. I think is probably the best person in the cast overall. You have Glenn Plummer, Amanda Donahue, Thomas Hayden Church, Julian Sands, Xander Berkeley. Great cast overall here. Just the script was the biggest problem this movie had to deal with. I mean, the movie could have been a whole lot better, probably if the script had been better, if we had gotten to know some of these characters more, if they weren't all condescending and most of them were unlikable. I mean, there's nobody you can really get behind except for Downey Jr., but he's dying of AIDS, and we know he's not going to make it to the end of the movie, and it's just like, you expect a whole lot more from him. So yeah, another real disappointing weekend from people that you should trust more when it comes to the scripts they're given, and you hope for a good movie, but One Night Stand definitely is not that movie. It's a pretty big disappointment. We've had a lot of big disappointments this weekend, but we have at least one movie that is pretty good, and it was Fox's attempt to get into the animation game and give Disney a run for its money, and that is Don Bluth's Anastasia.
An enchanted world.
The dawn of Imperial Russia.
A sorcerer's curse.
I will not rest until I see the end of the Romanov line forever!
A young princess
Anastasia! Grandma!
who vanished without a trace. One of the greatest mysteries of all time is now the most magical motion picture event of our time. 20th Century Fox proudly presents Anastasia.
Although the Tsar did not survive, one daughter may be still alive.
Alive? Ain't that the kick in the head? I guess the curse just ain't what it used to be, huh, sir?
It's the story of an orphan named Anya
You want to find your family, huh?
and a dreamer named Dmitri.
Do you see what I see?
Yes!
You think that I am Anastasia?
That's why I'm stuck here in limbo.
Oh, don't get so grabby.
They're teaming up to find a clue to her past before the evil Rasputin destroys their future.
I want to look my best.
Whoa, that fell right out.
The last of the Romanovs shall die.
We're gonna have to jump.
After you!
Baby! I got some nurses.
From the streets of Russia
Anya!
to capture the lights of Paris.
I will see no more girls claiming to be Anastasia.
You have to talk to her. Finding the truth
You really are Anastasia.
will be their greatest challenge.
You will address the princess as Your Highness.
And following her heart
We think they're allowed together.
Princesses don't marry kitchen boys.
will be her toughest choice.
What goes around comes around.
I'm not afraid of you.
Hold on! This can only end in tears.
And bring me home at
Anastasia.
I'd give her a ha and a hi-ya, and I'd kick her, sir.
I mean, a lot was riding on this movie. This was their 20th Century Fox's first attempt from their own animation company that they started. Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, who had been working on their own company for a number of years, making films that weren't as successful as their early works. They eventually became the head people behind the company. And this was the first movie that they were going to do, and this was the first movie that was trying to do exactly what Disney did. I mean, they take a lot from what Disney had done. They bring in the celebrity voice actors, they bring in this gorgeous-looking animation, they bring all these musical numbers in here. This is a film that they had a lot of high expectations for, and the film did pretty well. It was a big hit. It was a critical success. It was also a financial success, grossing over $140 million. And it made it was Don Bluth's most successful movie as a filmmaker, which is incredible to believe considering all the films he made beforehand. And like I said, you had a great cast to work with here. Meg Ryan, John Cusack, Kelsey Grammer, Christopher Lloyd, Hank Azaria, Bernadette Peters, Kirsten Dunst, Angela Lansbury. And the story is very much a similar story structure to the Disney Golden Age movies. And there are notable flaws to it. I think the review that Doug Walker did for the Nostalgia Critic last year, I think was a perfect summation of all the things that were kind of wrong with the movie. The editing overall is very off. Like, they have all the big musical numbers in the movie, but they all just kind of end quickly. Like, they end and then they go immediately next to the next scene. Like, in the case of something like The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, you have all these songs and sequences in the movie, but you also get the time. They also give you time to relax after what you've just seen, and then they move ahead to the next scene. Like, they have those brief pauses in there. The editing overall in this movie probably hurts the film a little bit more, but it's not an overall threat. It's not an overall bad thing whatsoever. I mean, it does. The movie overall is still very enjoyable. I will also say, though, some of that trailer kind of spoils a lot of the big story elements of the movie. I mean, of course, the big thing is that Anastasia is going to go find her grandmother, the Grand Duchess, played by Angela Lansbury, who's really good in the film as well. I think she's one of the stronger elements of it. And they kind of just give away kind of the big plot points, some of the big plot points that happen there. Like, she eventually gets, her grandmother eventually figures out that, yes, she is Anastasia. And then John Cusack's character has that whole thing about, princesses can't marry kitchen boys. Like, which is a very weird law if you really think about it. I know it's not exactly what they were wouldn't be what exactly is in the rules in this, but the fact that they say it a couple of times in this movie is just like, they almost make it seem like it is in there, but it's one of those weird things to add into the movie. It's just like, it feels kind of weak, honestly. It feels like kind of a weak thing to have kind of a third act breakup at some point, but as I said before, the movie isn't terrible by any means. It is a really enjoyable movie. Would I say it's one of Don Bluth's greatest movies? No, I wouldn't. I would still say stuff like The Secret of Nim, Land Before Time, American Tail, even All Dogs Go to Heaven are much better movies. I'll say it's definitely better than than most of the 90s movies that he made that were not very good, with the exception of The Pebble and the Penguin. Like, I put this just above Pebble and the Penguin. I do like Pebble and the Penguin a lot more than most people do, but I do admire this movie a lot. I think this is a film that is very well done. I think it's a film that shows that, hey, other studios can do what Disney do and do it right. Like, they did this better than Warner Brothers would eventually try to do with Quest for Camelot the following summer. And, like I said, it was a big hit. I mean, Disney really thought that Don Bluth was going to come back in there and try to get him again like they did in the 80s. So clearly Disney had to do something about it. I mean, they had to do something. You'd have to do something really crazy, like, I don't know, re-release the movie that kind of started the second golden age of the Disney Renaissance in 1997.
a young lion. Became a king. Before a beauty. Tamed a beast. Before Aladdin. Unleashed a genie. There was a little mermaid who dreamed of something more. Coming back only to theaters this November.
I want to be where the people are. I want to see them dancing up where they're... He's very handsome, isn't he?
I don't know, he looks kind of hairy and slobbery to me.
The child is in love with a prince. Wish I could be.
Lost your senses completely. He's a human. You're a mermaid.
Walt Disney Pictures invite you to enter a world of enchantment where dreams do come true. Sing with me now.
Don't be scared. You gotta move your head. Go on and kiss the girl.
At this rate, he'll be kissing her by sunset. It's time Ursula took matters into her own tentacles. I lost her once. I'm not gonna lose her again.
Look out!
This November, coming back only to theaters.
Under the sea. Under the sea. When the sun begin the beginning, it's music to me.
It's all the magic, all the music, and all the unforgettable characters
Mermaid of the port bow.
of Disney's most beloved animated classic, The Little Mermaid.
Teenagers, you give them an inch, they swim all over you.
Oh yeah, they did that. That was actually the second highest grossing movie this weekend. The Little Mermaid coming out was in theaters for only 17 days for the Thanksgiving holiday, and Disney purposely put that in theaters because they knew Anastasia was coming for them, and so they had to do the same thing they did with the Swan Princess 3 years prior to them. I mean, take one of their newer classic movies, re-release into the theaters, and take some of the money away. But I mean, The Little Mermaid did pretty well in terms of that re-release. I think it brought in about. Now I'm blanking right now. Okay, the re-release brought in about $27 million more to the total of the film, bringing it up to $123 million in total. And the box office overall worldwide is $235 million, which was a pretty decent deal for a film that was only in theaters for 17 days. I mean, it was literally in theaters for the Thanksgiving holiday, and then it just went away. It was basically Disney trying to take away as much money as they could from Anastasia, but Anastasia did still end up being very profitable in the end. As far as The Little Mermaid goes, I pretty much covered this movie already on a previous episode, so if you want to hear what I had to say about that one, go check out the Corner episode there. You'll see the weekend that came out, and I thought that was very interesting to bring up there. I mean, The Little Mermaid did pretty well, but keep in mind, Anastasia was only in limited release this weekend before eventually going wide the next weekend, and I wanted to bring that up just to add a little bit to the information there. So, what am I saying? That's Anastasia and also the re-release of The Little Mermaid. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie we have here, which is The Tango Lesson.
I've been following you in the tango, Pablo. But to make a film, you have to follow me. Are you ready?
So this is an Argentinian film from this director, Sally Porter, whose last movie was Orlando with Tilda Swinton. And Sally Porter plays herself, a filmmaker and screenwriter suffering from writer's block who's dissatisfied with her latest film project, which features the fashion industry. So she travels to Paris, where she meets this dancer named Pablo performing tango. She becomes obsessed with the dance and offers Pablo a part in her film in exchange for dance lessons. The two eventually become involved as dancers and eventually lovers. Their intimacy threatens the success of their dancing together, and this film explores the conflicts between the woman dancer accepting the man's lead in the dance, while the man must accept the woman's lead in the film. It's a love story and a showcase for Verone's director, and Pablo Verone, I should say. And when you look at the trailer for this, I got the sense of they were trying to do a modern-day version of La Dolce Vita, Federico Fellini's movie, which is phenomenal classic film. If you have not seen this movie, you need to see that movie. La Dolce Vita is a really great film. This feels kind of like the gender reversal of that, where instead of the woman, the man being seduced by the women in the woman in that movie, it's the opposite way. You can tell the film was directed in black and white, and it looks really intriguing. And I really like La Dolce Vita a lot, and I feel like this movie takes a lot of inspiration for that. I think it could be a pretty good movie. I've never seen it before, so I can't really say if it is or not, but the fact that it looks like they're trying to do a modern day take on a modern day version of La Dolce Vita, which I've said before is a really good film. I think that's more than enough to probably check this out one day. So I don't know. Maybe one day I definitely will check this one out. I have my curiosity. My curiosity is piqued on this one, I should say. So yeah. So that's a Tango Lesson. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we'll have the weekend before Thanksgiving, including the sequel to Mortal Kombat Annihilation. We also have John Grisham's The Rainmaker with Danny DeVito and Matt Damon among the cast. And also Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil from Clint Eastwood. So 3 films overall to look at next time around. We'll definitely delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.